Art Exchange. Most of you are familiar with Art Exchange, but we do have some new faces here. So just a quick little recap on what Art Exchange seeks to do in Grand Rapids. I think the overarching umbrella of what we hope to accomplish is to see art everywhere in the city. We aspire to do that by supporting local artists in particular, to boost the economy, the art economy in Grand Rapids, and build the unique brand of art that is unique to Grand Rapids. So that's what we seek to do. With that as our goal, as an organization, we want to have conversation with artists to get input into what are the needs, wants, hopes, wishes, and desires, and how are you seeing things from your perspective. So that's what this dinner and this discussion is about, to talk about those ideas, to help us with our strategic planning, to help us with ways that we can endeavor to support the artists in this community and fulfill our mission as an organization. This evening we're going to talk about key components which we believe are the keys to this recipe. And that would be creativity, commerce, and community. So we have some discussion around those three components. We've got a variety of questions, and we're hoping that you can feel free to just jump in and add to that. Let's dig in and let's start with the creative process, and Stephen's leading that conversation right now.
Yeah, so we have some questions just centered around understanding the creative processes, specifically your creative processes as artists. So this is a discussion that kind of encourages a healthy collaboration, so we might hear some ideas from each other. The act of creating, making something from absolutely nothing. So our questions center around that, because that's what artists do, right? We create something from absolutely nothing. So my first question is, what is art? Let's hear it. Go ahead, Jamie.
Art for me is creating an emotion. I want them to connect with it.
I want to connect with it.
This piece, that painting right there reminds me of something.
Reminds me of something, or makes me feel
It hurts
something.
my heart, or it brings joy to my heart.
So
For me, it's I'm taking pain and I'm taking it for myself and putting it out here. And if someone else finds joy in that, and that's a connection that they brought from in here and said, oh, this is joy that I see from the experience I have. Or if it's pain, but what they see in it can be completely different from what I put into it. Art is experimentation.
Talk about a time when you surprised yourself artistically and maybe took the challenge to do something that was maybe uncharacteristic of what you do as an artist.
you mean something outside of your medium?
Something outside of your medium, something outside of your comfort zone, something outside of your understanding. A time when you took a risk.
Chris Phillips. I was an educator of very young children to kids of middle school age for about 30 years. So when I wound up with peripheral neuropathy, meaning your hands get numb or they're filled with pain, or shards of glass, all kinds of crazy sensations that aren't real, but it doesn't keep your hands from going like this. So I was on a website called Photo a Day. I don't know how I was invited, still haven't known, but in the month that I was invited and I started participating every day, there was a different photo prompt. A woman posted a painting of an Aboriginal painting, and it just fascinated me, so I started looking and looking and looking, and was just blown away by how beautiful these contemporary Aboriginal artists' work was. And I thought, okay, I'm going to retrain my hands. I had to learn to look at my hand instead of the brush or the canvas, which is really tricky in itself if you know mean, we're all artists here, you know how tough it is, right? And I practiced every day, and I still do. And honestly, censor, I was so pissed that it was so tough, you know? It's like, well, that's not worth the censor. Shall I say something else to the camera? I was irritated that something that so was taken for granted by me all of a sudden became so difficult. But, you know, every day, just, you know, suck it up, do it every day. And I went beyond my comfort zone big time. I'm not good at, as Sarah will know, I'm not patient. It's like, if I'm not happy, move it on.
Yep.
Yeah, so, which serves me well. But, yeah, so it was a very strange event that happened to lead me to a strange event where I saw this art, have no idea why, but it sort of changed my life, and that was 3 years ago, I think.
I think for me it's just I'll make stuff without it. You know, if it has a surface and whatever materials that I happen to have, I'll make something, and I think that's kind
You know, a
of.
lot of people really would strive for that type of innovation.
Bingo.
Stephen, if I could draw maybe a thread that I see in,
Absolutely.
or that I'm hearing in what everyone said is the difficulty, the desire and the difficulty of innovating, and the importance of comfort zone versus getting yourself on an edge, or getting someone who pushes you to the edge, or having a disease thrust upon you that pushes you to the edge, and you come out in this new place. And it's, I think, the single most greatest challenge for an artist, because you can't really push yourself to the edge. It's something else does it, or it's an openness to allow it to happen to you, which is incredibly, like, it's the deepest place of fear, right? Okay, I gotta tell you guys, first I'm gonna reveal a very sad truth. I am completely unauditory. I'm very verbal and I'm very visual, but I don't hear very well. Music is often an annoyance. I need total silence. Okay, so I was invited to paint on stage with a jazz quintet, a jazz quintet playing, and I was invited to paint on stage. This is not anything that would be anything like anything I would ever do. And I just said yes. I don't know what came over me, but I said yes, and it was an unbelievable experience. And here's what I discovered. The music was playing, and I stopped thinking.
Ooh.
Yeah. I was just channeling. It was the coolest thing. Like, there's no... Like, I wasn't thinking, I wasn't planning, I had an idea to start, but then I just went for an hour in front of a huge audience. And it was like the coolest thing that ever happened to me.
Maybe we have to get across the idea somehow, maybe through this group, that appreciation for art comes from a state that's not maybe in your comfort zone. The creation of art hopefully isn't always in your comfort zone. And there is something about that pushing yourself to an edge, but then leaping, that maybe is the true, where art comes from.
So that's where that's my next question is, so describe your creative process in as much detail as possible.
That's really personal.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
No doubt.
Well, I feel like that's a really personal
It was a
question
very
too.
personal question.
There are some things that you want to hide. Like, there are some things about your thought process that you don't really want to share because it's not like other people would be like, might judge you. You know, it's a very.
People don't want to hear something like this.
You know what?
Wow. I really don't want to know now.
From the time I was a 10-year-old boy until this very moment, and I'm 58 years old, it's always been two questions. I mean, 2 words. What if? You know what I'm saying? And it's
And that's what-
like I said, from the time I was 10 until now, it's always been, well, what if? What if I did this? What if it did that? You know what I'm saying? And to evoke anything other than that's nice. That's all I've ever wanted.
You know, I guess for me, it may sound kind of concrete, but I'm trying to evolve, as I keep evolving, I'm trying to come up with something that's never been done before, not to be better than other people, just to better myself,
So about
and not copy other people in my life. So just, I was in sales for years and years, it was just like, it's not satisfying.
Well, I saw some, what I thought was something special that he was doing, and it wasn't just, somebody fiddling around, it was.
Sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing, I'm just experimenting. It's like, sometimes it comes out, and then sometimes, for the most part, a lot don't.
So we're facing a world of hurt out there, right?
Yes.
Not to bring all that stuff in here right now,
let's
but that's the source of my inspiration. It's fairly dark, but I think that it is the creative mind, whether it's software development, which we have 2
Yes.
people here,
Yes.
2 creatives in
Yes.
that world, and it's really it's all the same thing. I mean, our disciplines and our media disappear and are disappearing rapidly in this technological world we live in, and it is the creative mind and the capacity to ask what if that is going to be our human salvation.
Going to bring us to our last question about the creative process. And if you want, we can just kind of go around the table, because what we want to know at this point is what project that is on the horizon for you that you're most excited about working on. So what's coming up next for you as an artist? What do you think is going to be your next project? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I've been working close with the GRCC sculpture professor. We have finally proven that we need sculpture pads on campus.
Nice.
Everything is a go.
Well, you pushed hard for that, though.
Yes, we've been working very hard for this. So we will have, I think, 5 sculpture pads on campus, 4 which will be commissioned or found artists, and then the last one will be for students. And that student exhibit will be there for 2 years. And I will be on the board, and I get the first student sculpture pad.
So I'm as I said earlier, software developer by day. But I really think that both the art and sort of software development for me they live together. They feed off one another, and so I've been doing a bunch of, I guess, paintings with on wood panel with like Sharpie paint markers and
Crazy stuff.
and
awesome.
clear spray. So really, it's I've been kind of on a roll for the past 2 months with them.
And it's good work, too.
Could you explain what you mean by Creative Commons?
All right, we are going to go ahead and move on to creative commerce / economy in Grand Rapids. We are talking about the exchange of art products for financial gain. And how this contributes to the community overall, the entire Grand Rapids community or West Michigan community. That's kind of the question, is why does it seem so difficult for art and commerce to make connection directly in the world and specifically in Grand Rapids?
That's hard.
I think
That's one that makes me angry.
He and his wife wanted to purchase a neat piece, which are very expensive, and we're
such good friends, I offered it to them at a third of the retail price. And as most of you know, galleries take 50%, so I'm still making less than I would if I sold it at a gallery. And I remember the husband, when he gave me the check, he was like, boy, I wish I could make this much money just offhand. And I'm like, so you're not including, one, the supplies, two, my schooling, the research, the sketching, the planning, the 6 months that it took me to create this. But just because you're handing me a check at this 1 minute, you're considering that how I make all my money? I mean, it was such a slap in the face. I was so excited they wanted to purchase a piece from me. They weren't like super wealthy or anything. And then it was just like a slap in the face that he didn't realize what went into it, especially from him who goes around and lectures and gets paid for these lectures. And I wanted to say, and I didn't, I just kind of, because it just hit me so hard. But when I thought about it, I was like, you have to plan for those lectures. You get paid that day for that lecture, but you've planned for it, you've written it, you went to school, you've researched. He like discounted all of that from my artwork. He like made it was totally disconnected. All of a sudden it was just this little price tag for him.
Without getting into too much politics, right? We live in a capitalist society where goods drive a lot of behavior, and there's a certain level of mindset to acquire goods, and then you reach a point in life where you want to get rid of goods and realize that they're a Sisyphean boulder on your back, right? That you're just managing all the time. And so as an art maker, you're producing goods, and then it raises the question, well, what are these goods for? To decorate a wall, to inspire thought? What is the purpose for the good, and how does that get valued? And so if you're in a market-driven value place, the value is rarity for artists, right? The uniqueness of vision. But then your clientele has to recognize that. But we're all swimming in too much stuff. So I'm not really, I'm raising just more questions.
No, you know what? But that's a perfect answer to what, these folks had intended to do, to bring art into every day. And maybe that will help people understand that this is not just every day. This is specialized as much as a physician is, even though we're not saving lives. We kind of might be, just by that emotional response. The trivialization of art by, our generation, paint by numbers, it's been trivialized to the point where it is no more than craft. And in a town like ours, we have an attempt at making public art, but it's stuff that rich people bought, that rich people put on the scene, and of course, great thanks to the benefactors of those issues, but the public art is advertising. Always there are billboards and big neon signs and sell this, buy this, light this up and cause some light pollution. So somehow our idea of public art got twisted in parts of America where it did not get twisted in other parts of the world, where it's respected and it's a daily thing and it's beautiful. And I don't know, you just made me think about that, but I don't know where to go with it.
Everything on this table has been designed by an artist.
Right, everything
here. The plates, the silverware, the wallets, the phones.
Lovely dish.
3D design. But when it comes down to us just creating art, what we call art, paintings, sculptures, or things that don't have a real purpose, it get pushed to the side as a luxury. So I think the best way, because of my background, to bring it together with Barrett Jackson. I don't know if anybody here understands cars. Barrett Jackson is they auction off vehicles. A 1967 Mustang has gone for $250,000.
Well, there goes that wish for me.
That's ridiculous. But the thing is, if you put it in the same area as art, okay, so Barrett Jackson, there's this rich guy or female that wants to have a 67 Mustang, and a 68, and a 70, and a 71. He wants all those for his collection. He's going to pay whatever it takes to get that one car, whether it's worth $250 or not. We're in that same boat. You have to make yourself that artist that the rich people want. Unfortunately, that's the boat that we are in. We are not selling to the middle class. We are not selling to the poor. We are selling to the rich, and the rich only, if we are going to be financially stable with our art. And that's a sad story that is
Kind of cool, like what this idea is to rent and fill space with little idea starters. Oh yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I think about, like, it's not decoration on the wall, but it could be, it's really a different idea. And it's a really cool idea.
Right.
I think the biggest kind of obstacle to get around is that there's not a easy correlation between the value of an art piece and fulfilling a need or fulfilling needs. So you look at like a doctor, right? You see the need of needing, a surgery or some sort of treatment, and
we're the plastic surgeons.
Right? Kind of, a little bit. But there's some, art typically fulfills a more, I would say a more spiritual need than anything, and it's harder I think it's harder for someone to justify their mind of spending, a few $100s on a piece of art when they have, all these other needs or wants that they want to fulfill first. So that's kind of the challenge to get around.
It's kind of a double-edged sword because we live in a disposable time where you buy something and then 2 years later you throw it out. So people are buying their art at Meyer Market. And it's not necessarily bad art, but it's disposable art. So they don't feel bad about tossing out a reproduced painting and just filling it back up with I'm just going to dip a toaster and hang it there. And it changes with their couch or their rug or curtain.
Or they would probably be, if it were, an original artwork, there would be, I do feel, a greater connection to, at least the pieces of artwork that we have, that we've got. There's definitely more of a connection to the artwork we've purchased that no one else can get. Right. There is something there's something to be said for that.
So what you have is not the dogs playing poker on velvet.
Right.
I love that.
Well, what you just said, Jake, makes me think about, I would say in greater Michigan, and probably this is true lots of places, the one place where people will more freely spend money on art and bring art home is on vacation.
Tourist
They want to
towns.
buy a piece that speaks to their experience. They're buying a memory. And so that's the emotional piece. And so it works in Saugatuck and Pentwater and up north
South Haven.
for that reason. And
South,
and it's not necessarily always moneyed people, it's people who are doing something. This is our 1 week family trip to wherever, our lifetime trip to Italy. I'm going to bring home this street artist piece. And so if you think about how much has happened in the last 10 years of branding in Michigan and how we've marketed beer, if we took that same kind of, which I think is maybe our idea here, of branding our artists, marketing them as this is an experience you're buying. Forget about the message of the artist, let's not worry about it, but if you're really talking about marketing, what are you really buying that you can't get at Target? Because you're absolutely right? It's not home decoration, you're buying a moment, you're buying, okay.
Moving away from that mass-produced stuff to getting more meaningful items in your environment.
You are also highly educated consumers.
Yes.
So just something to keep in mind. I mean, not that they're
Yeah.
Well, because we're artists or
I don't realize, I honestly don't realize I'm doing that, but now that we've had this conversation, that is what it is. It's buying things that aren't mass produced. Well, Jake and I's favorite date is to go to the cheap furniture store and make fun of the artwork. So we don't like mass produced art. Now we've been doing that for, we've been at a while. We might be doing it again soon. That was our favorite date. Like,
You know, we're kind of asking that question about absorbing the community into maybe a Grand Rapids brand of art. How do we shift or grow the local mindset beyond, I like commercial art, that's what I'm about, to investing in serious art, becoming collectors, becoming true patrons? Do you think our community is there in terms of savvy, intelligent, educated art investors, collectors, patron of the work? And how do we get there? You know?
I think that our society is very driven by commercialism. I mean, people are inspired by what they see on the internet. Like iPod commercials. There was a huge movement of art teachers who were doing these iPod ads as art projects because that's what inspired the kids. They were excited about the people the silhouettes dancing.
Good. Very graphic.
They were very
and
graphic and good, but we always tapping into commercialism.
Grand Rapids is a provincial market, and so how do we want to bring Grand Rapids along? It's not New York, it's not San Francisco or LA, it's not Chicago.
Well, then you have to get the philanthropists involved to change the culture, just the way the Medicis and, you know.
well, how do we get the philanthropic attitude?
I actually disagree with that. I think that that's part of our problem.
I see, no, I totally understand
I think
what you're saying,
that's a big part of the problem. I think that if it's more grassroots and coming from the bottom and teaching each other, I think that's.
So part of what Art Exchange is trying to do is we're trying to kind of, like we said secondly, but open up to everyone. You know, make it accessible to everyone. So, and that's what the question is: how do we do that? How do we expand it? How do we expand it? Because at the end of the day, art is a cultural product, right? So we can go back to the days of cave writings and where we communicated. Art is very much a cultural product, which means it belongs to the people, not necessarily the elite, but everybody. And that's so the idea of art everywhere. We're trying to be true to what art is all about, because it's a cultural product. So everybody should get the benefit of that.